This is Johnny Vedmore on today's News Talk TNT.
So, Graham Moore, my friend, welcome back to the Johnny Vedmore Show. Tell me about this very important case you are about to take to court. That's of Charles Staple versus the police.
Right. Well, thanks for inviting me back on. What we've got is a situation where, so let me make this clear to everyone listening. There is a law called the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 134, and it is called torture. It is a criminal offence internationally and domestically. It comes via what's known as UNCAT, which is the United Nations Convention Against Torture. And since 1988 and its incorporation into English law, not once has it ever been charged against a British police officer. So making sure everyone's aware of this, all of the NGOs, all of the so-called human rights groups, there have been 1,888 deaths in police custody, either through restraint or in a cell, in a police, and we're not talking about prisons, we're talking about in police custody. Not one single one of them, not one police officer has ever been charged with torture. And torture doesn't mean pulling people's fingernails out. We're talking about the UNCAT, right? So United Nations Convention Against Torture, incorporated into English law in 1988. We're talking about their definition of torture, which is unlawful violence. It must be a police officer or a state official. And if those two things are matched, it's for the police officer to prove that they were not acting unlawfully. Charles Staple was beaten, handcuffed, and a police officer smashed his head on the road surface when he's already handcuffed behind his back, face down on the floor, smashed his head on the floor 4 or 5 times. It's all on video. Suddenly, the police sergeant that did that, his camera doesn't work. Very lucky we had independent journalists videoed the whole thing. There was a trial because the police arrested him for assaulting a police officer. And that trial took 3 days. And this was during lockdown. So the first part of the case was he allowed to be there? He challenged it with what's known as a case stated to the magistrates. The magistrates threw the case out against him. The police officer carried on with the assault in a police officer and then changed it to attempted, because there was no evidence that he assaulted anyone. In fact, all the evidence showed that the police were unlawfully assaulting him. Again, one of the other officers, again, we've only just got his name, this is 3.5 years later, attempted on camera to cut his airway off, put his glove over his mouth and his nose at the same time and was squeezing. So what we've done is we put in an application, or Charles Staple put in an application to the Attorney General under Section 135 of the Criminal Justice Act to privately prosecute all 4 officers for torture. The Attorney General then denied and said, you can't, by the way, we're the first people ever to make an application for that since 1988, completely said no. We are the first people to apply for it. Again, making sure people are aware, because of that, it went to judicial review. Judicial review kicked it out. They didn't want to touch it. So now we have a tort in the High Court tomorrow with Charles Staples. And if you go through the list of torts, and there are many, misfeasance in public office, trespass against a person, wrongful arrest, assault, battery, and then you've got negligence. There are a number of torts that are being lined up, but there should be a tort of torture, because under the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 134, it is now illegal. So that means there is already a criminal injunction against police officers committing torture against you, right? We've always had it since 1640. But now they've got this Section 135. They are vetoing international law and domestic law. And for the first time ever, or since 1640, an Englishman can't get justice for torture. And that's what's in the High Court tomorrow.
Talk that matters. Johnny Vedmore on today's News Talk, TNT.